songs, let me tell you about a friend. It's Craig LeBlanc, where the good times never end. Talking Parks and Rec, it's a show you gotta know. Welcome one and all to the Daily Parks and Rec Show. It's the Daily Parks and Rec Show.
You know, I just fell in love with the work. Those roughly 500 Parks and Rec professionals got up every day and worked their butts off to just serve community. And it was really inspiring in spite of all the challenges. I really just fell in love with the work and fell in love with the idea of like impacting everybody in the community, not just sort of the K-12 stuff. And was just really, really excited to be a part of an organization. All of us worked together to transform from being, an agency that was in crisis.
All right, this is Craig LeBlanc with the Daily Parks and Rec Show. This is a special edition of the Leadership Series. We are also part of a family of shows all focused on parks and recreation, helping to build DPRS Media Network, which is a network exclusively dedicated to the parks and rec industry. And so just give you a quick rundown of the shows that we have. The Leadership Series, which is the one we're doing today, runs 5 days a week, 12 noon, where we highlight professionals, leaders in the industry, and kind of tell their story, how they got in the Parks and Rec, what's their why, what Parks and Rec means to them, and then also how we know what's going on in their city. And so we run that show Monday through Friday, 12 noon Eastern, and then we have our 1:30 time slot. The Monday show is a technology show about how smart parks are being formed and using a lot of technology to control infrastructure. That's with our host, Dave Ramirez. Then that brings us to Tuesday. If you're a military veteran or in the military and you've played basketball in the military base, that's MWR. For those not familiar with it, every military base across the world has essentially a Parks and Rec department on base. And so John Prue helps us run that one. It's every Tuesday, really since the first Tuesday of January this year. So that's been a great show. Thanks a lot, John, for helping us put that on. Wednesday, we work with Henry County, Georgia to produce two shows, one called The Rec Room and one called Safe Spaces. Safe Spaces is run by Thomas White, and it's where we talk about neurodivergence and mental health and how Parks and Rec plays a part in that mental health in its community. And then once a month, we work with Henry County, Georgia to pull back the curtain on very specific topics of Parks and Rec, and they bring in their whole leadership team to talk about festivals or 5Ks or master planning, and we're able to really pick it apart and see how a very well-run Parks and Rec department handles all these issues. Okay, then that brings us to Thursday. Every Thursday, Youth Sports Mastery. This show has been running for over a year now, so this is all thing rec sports. So if you're an athletic director or a coach, they have pro athletes and officials that come on the show. And so really great show that Aaron's been running for over a year. And then on Fridays, we have our latest edition. Oh, wait, I forgot. The Young Professionals Network. We have a show for y'all every Thursday, 5 p.m. Eastern. This is all for all the young professionals that are new to this industry, that are still trying to get their bearings and get connected within it. This is a great show for you to learn about where the young professionals are and where you can get connected on that. So that's every Thursday, 5 p.m. Eastern. And then we finish up the week. This is our latest show. It's one I've been looking to create since we started DPRS Media Network, and it's all things aquatics. And so aquatics is always a super heavy lift for a lot of departments, and it's typically a beast to run and stuff. So we found a very good host who's probably one of the foremost authorities inside the aquatics industry for Parks and Rec, Wesley King. If you haven't watched any of his shows, if you have anyone or know anyone in aquatics, I promise you, you go watch one of the 7 shows we produce, you're going to get something out of it. They produce amazing content with a lot of wisdom that's gone into the aquatics life. So that's kind of our lineup, along with we do attend about 10 Parks and Rec events, annual events a year. Just got back from California and Illinois before that. We went to Georgia this year, Louisiana, Mississippi. We got a lot of states lined up this year. So if you'd like the Daily Parks and Rec Show to attend your state conference, it takes us about 6 months to kind of schedule all that out. So hit me up on LinkedIn, and we'd love to come cover your convention and tell the rest of America what's going on in your state. All right, so with that being said, I want to play our 500th episode. Big hats off to everybody that's come on the show that's recorded 500 episodes in the last 15 months. Couldn't have done it without the love and support. Big hats off to the team, and especially hats off to all the show guests that have come on to share their story about Parks and Rec. So, Jovi, why don't you go ahead and play that real quick, and then we'll come back and start our conversation with Jesus and Justin.
It didn't start with a big studio. It didn't start with a massive audience. It started with a simple idea. One conversation, one camera, one episode. Back then, DPRS Media Network was just a vision. No guarantees, no roadmap, just a purpose. To tell stories that mattered. Stories from the Parks and Recreation community. Stories of leadership, passion, impact, and the people making a difference every single day. Episode by episode, that vision began to grow. More conversations, more voices, more people who believed in what we were building. What started as a show became something much bigger. A place where people felt seen, a place where ideas were shared, a place where the Parks and Rec community could connect, learn, and inspire one another. And today, we celebrate a major milestone. 500 episodes, 500 stories, 500 moments, 500 reasons to keep moving forward. But this is not the finish line. This is the beginning of our next chapter. In the months ahead and in the years to come, DPRS Media Network is growing into something even greater. We are building something truly special for the Parks and Recreation community. Something designed to bring people closer, to create stronger connections, to open new opportunities, and to continue serving the people who inspire everything we do. We are also expanding our reach through new partnerships, working with organizations who believe in our mission, partners who share our vision for community, leadership, and impact. And beyond the screen, we're showing up in more places than ever before, attending conferences, meeting leaders face-to-face, building connections that strengthen our community. Because DPRS has never been just about content. It has always been about connection. To everyone who has been with us, from episode 1 to episode 500, thank you. This milestone belongs to all of you. Here's to how it all started. And here's to everything still to come. The future of DPRS Media Network starts now.
All right. So why don't we start with just y'all introducing yourself to the Parks and Rec community? Jesus, why don't we
Craig,
start
I
with
can't
you?
hear you. Sorry.
Oh, let's see. Jesus, can you hear me? Hold up. Jovi, why don't you go ahead and run a promo, and then I'll reach out to them.
Still can't hear you, Craig.
Welcome to DPRS Media Network, the voice of Parks and Recreation professionals, where leadership grows, facilities thrive, and communities connect. Leadership Series, insights from the leaders shaping our industry. Facility maintenance, the backbone of safe and sustainable spaces. Young Professionals Network, empowering the next generation of Parks and Rec leaders. The Rec Room, real conversations, real stories, real impact. Youth Sports Mastery, elevating the game for athletes and communities. Smart Parks Forward, innovation driving the future of recreation. On the front line, honoring those who serve our communities every day. Athletes Commute, the journey behind the performance. The Aquatics Life, everything aquatics, safety, staffing, sustainability. Safe Spaces and Green Spaces, a show exploring the connection between nature and mental well-being. And we don't just tell the stories, we show up where it happens. From local gatherings to national parks and recreation conferences, DPRS Media Network is on the ground, capturing conversations, highlighting innovation, and amplifying the voices shaping our industry's future. DPRS Media Network, connecting parks, empowering people, inspiring communities.
Before the game, before the lights, before the pressure, there's a moment most people never see. Welcome to The Athletes Commute, a podcast distributed by DPRS Media Network, co-produced by Her Sports, and hosted by Jordan Ziff. Each episode, Jordan gets behind the wheel, driving athletes to practice, to training, to game day, while getting to know who they really are beyond the jersey. The mindset, the grind, the sacrifices, the moments no one talks about. No scripts, no filters, just real conversations in real motion. Because every athlete has a journey, and every journey deserves to be heard. This is The Athletes Commute. Buckle up.
This year, we didn't just attend an event. We became part of something bigger. IPRA 2026 brought together leaders, innovators, and community builders, all united by one mission: to strengthen parks, recreation, and the people they serve. For DPRS Media Network, it was an honor to join IPRA 2026 and take part in meaningful, real-time conversations, capturing stories and amplifying voices that matter. To IPRA, thank you for creating a space where collaboration thrives and the future of parks and recreation is shaped together. We extend our deepest gratitude to Amelia and all our partners who made these live interviews possible. IPRA 2026 wasn't just an event, it was a reminder that when communities connect and stories are shared, impact follows. From all of us at DPRS Media Network, thank you, IPRA. Thank you, partners and sponsors. We're honored to stand with you and excited for what's next.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yeah, there you are.
Jesus, we got you.
I can't hear you though, Craig.
Oh no,
Oh no.
we got
Can
one.
you hear me, Jesus?
I can hear you, Justin. Yeah.
All right, let me see if it's something on my end. Well, Justin,
I'll just I can repeat the question.
And then you can repeat my answer. Can you hear me, Craig?
Yes, I can hear you
Yeah.
fine.
I still can't hear you though.
Justin, why don't you ask Jesus to just introduce himself, and I'll try to back out and see if it's on my end. And I'll come
Okay.
back.
Great. Jesus, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us a little about who you are and
All right. Well, good. Hello, everybody.
now I can't hear you. Can you hear
All
me?
right. I can hear you still.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can see you give me a thumbs up. Oh man.
Yeah.
Did you leave and come back?
I can try. Should I do that?
Yeah, try that. Okay.
All right.
And Justin, you can hear me fine?
I can hear you. Jesus is gonna leave and come back.
Okay, yeah. Isn't that what you did?
That's what I did and it worked.
Yep.
But yeah.
Welcome to the 20 whatever century we're in.
Oh my gosh. I thought that all things tech were supposed to be figured out by now. Isn't that what's supposed to happen?
Yeah. And then even after 500 shows, this is a recent little bug that they've had. I don't know
is
if
it?
it's on StreamYard. It's kind of happened the last few shows, but most of all the technical issues kind of work out. Let's see if that fixed it.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
All right, how about now?
All right. I can hear you.
Okay, there we
All
go.
right.
We are capable people.
Well,
commenting
don't
how,
go too far. We just started.
We just started.
Got off to a bumpy start. Well, at least we got to run some of our promos about some of the conventions we attended. Thank you, Joby, for getting us through that mess.
Whew.
Yeah. So Jesus, why don't you tell everybody how you got into Parks and Rec? Did you kind of discover Parks and Rec? Were you involved as a child, or did you discover it later in life?
Yeah, no. I kind of stumbled into it. I mean, I think the extent of my Parks and Rec experience as a child was essentially sneaking into the local Boys and Girls Club because I didn't know you could actually get in for free on the other side. And so, but grew up in a big family, and my parents would just kick us out of the house, and that was sort of Parks and Rec for us. But professionally, I kind of stumbled into it. I'm fortunate enough to have had a whole career in education prior to getting into Parks and Recreation. So I worked at every level of sort of the public education system. But when I was working in education in Washington, D.C., the place that has a pretty interesting and exciting Parks and Recreation system, but also has all the National Park Service and all the the state, federal, all the other functions. So I ended up just getting the opportunity to jump in and help the department there at Parks and Recreation. The mayor at the time was running for re-election, and we all know Parks and Rec stuff is pretty important, particularly during elections. So he needed some help coming in to stabilize the department. And I had done operational work before, and that was what they were struggling with. And I jumped in, and it was the story I like to share is that I told the mayor, I'll do it if I can get my job I'll do it for 6 months and I can go back to my job. And famous last words. A couple things happened. So he didn't get reelected, which was important, but more importantly, I just fell in love with the work, right? The Parks and Rec department at the time in Washington, D.C. had lots and lots of challenges, struggling with basic things like getting the pools open, lots of legal challenges, contracting challenges. The community was beating them up. The government was beating them up, all the elected officials. But those roughly 500 Parks and Rec professionals got up every day and worked their butts off to just serve community. And it was really inspiring in spite of all the challenges. So I really just fell in love with the work and fell in love with the idea of like impacting everybody in the community, not just sort of the K-12 stuff. And was just really, really excited to be a part of an organization. All of us worked together to transform from being, an agency that was in crisis to becoming CAPRA accredited. We did our whole new revamp of our organizational sort of identity, our structure, our planning. And so it was a pretty exciting opportunity. And I think it was like the best way to get involved with Parks and Recreation, right? I didn't know any better, and it was just an amazing place to be in. So since then, after that, I was able to, I'll tell this story maybe on some other podcast, but all the elected official side of things, I ended up, the mayor that kept me on after that mayor didn't get reelected, he asked me to stick around. That guy didn't get reelected, so I ended up, in Seattle, of all places, where that mayor invited me to come and serve as a director of Parks and Rec there. And that's where I got to meet the esteemed Justin Cutler here.
Yeah.
He and I had the chance to work together up in the Pacific Northwest. But yeah, no, I sort of stumbled into it, but I'm in it. I'll say one last thing. One of the things that the people ask me, so I've done education, I've done nonprofit work. And right before I started here in Austin, which is where I am now, Austin, Texas, I was on the nonprofit side running a conservancy, which also exciting, big, ambitious project here in Austin. But I a lot of reflection. I'm not getting any younger, but just really thinking about what I love doing. And for me, really, I come to the place where the real work of improving community, of supporting community members, happens at the city level, and happens at the city level. And I do think that Parks and Rec, of all the departments at the city level, is the best position to really have that kind of a positive impact. So, I'm stuck here for as long as, they'll keep me, and they'll sort of kick me out at some point, but I love it. I love working in the city. I love working in Parks and Recreation. I'm just so fortunate to have stumbled into it.
Yeah, well, great to have you on the show, and glad to have you over there in Austin, one of my favorite cities in all of America. I love visiting as often as I can. So Justin, how did you get to meet Jesus, and what's y'all's background together?
Yeah, no, for me, I had the opportunity to work for the city of Seattle. Christopher Williams, a great mentor of mine, and he was the interim superintendent. I think he spent more years as interim superintendent than like the previous 5 or 6 superintendents in that role, right? Right, Jesus? And
Yeah,
Christopher is
yeah.
just, if you know about Seattle Parks and Recreation, you know Christopher Williams. And I had the opportunity in 2019, I think it was, prior to COVID, where I was invited to be the director of recreation. And then during that time, Jesus what are we calling it? Taking
Version
a
two.
sabbatical.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I took a
between
year off.
between term one and term two in
Yeah.
Seattle, and then he came back, and I had the unique privilege and honor of working with him and learning from him and growing as a professional. And then, as mayors do, there was a transition period, and he left, and then I left and went to the city of Atlanta.
Oh, fantastic. All right. So a couple of topics we wanted to talk about that are specific to large cities. Maybe we can just start with, what do y'all think is like one problem that's a little bit different or obstacles? And actually off camera, Justin was talking about how, it really is the same problems, just at large scale. So Justin, I guess I'll go ahead and let you kind of tackle that one first.
Yeah, no, Jesus, the three of us, we were all talking about, city scale. And I've worked in rural communities in Central Oregon. I've worked in suburban communities in Colorado and in Oregon. And I think one of the things that I find is that in all the different places I worked, it's often about scale and size and opportunity. In Lapine, Oregon, population, a couple thousand people. I was the only staff person there for a good year, and then I was able to hire a staff person. We created the park district from scratch, and so you carry a lot of that weight, and it's a lot of fun, and it's just different scale. And then same with suburban communities, and then as you go to larger communities, you have to refine your leadership. It's about delegation, it's about partnership, collaboration, and that's always been something that I've tried to do across my career, is to build successful partners, to build collaboration. And I think the larger the size of your community, the more complex those partnerships are. So instead of calling one or two nonprofits, now you're calling 3, 4, 5, or 20 nonprofits. And so as a leader, you have to evolve your skills and just bringing more people together, and things tend to take more time. In the Pine, if I wanted to change something, I just go out and change it, right? I'd go fix the trash can because I was the person that fixed the trash can. I would go pick through the cans and sort out the cans because we used cans to raise money. Here in Atlanta, like, it's a little different. I can do that, and I can do that with a team of people, and I can provide that support to our team. And so it's different scale. And I think what we were commenting on is just, sometimes people feel intimidated about these larger organizations.
Mhm.
And I know that sometimes there's a gap between people who want to work in a suburban organization or a rural organization. They may be a little concerned about working in a city. And I think, I don't want to speak for you, Jesus, but I think we both would agree that it's just different scale, different size, and you really have to become comfortable with that size and scale and be willing to really delegate. And I think that's the leaders that I've seen be really successful in large urban organizations are the ones that can delegate, inspire, and support their team to be excellent. And so, how are you creating that system that supports you as a leader, but fundamentally your team as leaders out in the community? And if everybody sees themselves as a leader and a manager, then everybody takes responsibility for the work that needs to be get done. And that's really what I believe is fundamental to kind of large urban leadership.
Mm. Jesus, any comments on anything Justin just said?
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right. And I have not had the opportunity to work in a smaller jurisdiction, but I agree on the scale piece. I guess I think about it I would imagine that when you're in a like a smaller scale, you have to do everything. But the benefit of that is you learn how to do everything, which is
Yeah.
really an important piece. In a large system, you have to sort of make time and force yourself to figure out how to get out on a truck so you can see the work firsthand. So there is that distance, which makes it more challenging. And I guess what I would say is,
Hmm.
you have to be very deliberate about engaging with the work, because it's so easy to sit in my office in nonstop meetings and still make really important decisions, but you don't see the work firsthand as often as I would imagine on a smaller scale. I guess the other thing I would say is, and maybe this is something that I'm really interested in, but when you think about an organization, you think about sort of the challenges that we in Parks and Recreation as an industry face. A lot of it has to do with just having clarity of focus within. And a lot of those challenges can be overcome if you get everybody in the organization sort of working on the same problems, sort of the same direction. And that's really hard to do in a bigger system, right? Because if you have Justin could tell himself in the morning when he was the only employee how great everything was, right? But then all of a sudden you start magnifying that, and we're gearing up to plan. And Justin might remember this, but we're gearing up to plan our first all staff community building conference here in Austin. They've never done it before, but it's just such an important thing, in my view, to just get everybody together, to hear the same things, to see each other, because we're also all over the place. The bigger the system, the less connection the employees have with each other, and just really, you have to be very thoughtful and very deliberate about building those systems to encourage that community building within the department, which is really critical for our work. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's one thing too. Is like in larger systems, you have to be intentional about
yeah,
that team
yeah.
building. Whereas in smaller systems, you kind of naturally bump into each other, and I think that's really important. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yes, I like what you said, because it seems like at any scale, you're still building community. Whether you're the
Mhm.
only person or whether
Mhm.
you got 1,000 people working for you, you're still building community. And I like what Justin said about leadership. So knowing that leadership kind of starts with yourself, what do each of you kind of do to kind of work with yourself as a leader to make sure you're growing in your capacity to lead people? And then after that, we can talk about how you know, transition into helping to lead others as your department grows. Jesus, would you like to go first?
Sure. That's such a great question. And you think by now, at this point in my career, I would have the pat answers for, like, everybody asks you what kind of leader you are, all this stuff, and it's interesting, right? As I kind of was saying when we're off camera, like, I love this work. This is where maybe I said it on camera, but this is where I feel like I'm meant to be. And I think as a leader, I really view my job is to sort of figure out how to create systems, create an organization that helps people feel that passion for the work, right? And so that's a hard thing to really think about, because it isn't just about the project that they're working on and how they're managing it, but is how is the gardener who comes into our headquarters and every day methodically really works on the plants. How do they connect to the mission of the department, and how that mission connects to how that connects to the mission of the city, and how we improve the lives of our residents. So I guess I like to lead with sort of just thinking about, here's where we're going, here's the vision, here's what we're trying to accomplish, and then how do I help support folks to get to that. And so really, I tell my team all the time, like, my job is to help them be successful, right? And help them be able to do what they do, and they can't do that if they don't know how their work impacts lives, that they don't understand sort of how kind of resources they're getting. They don't understand sort of how we're going to hold them accountable. So it's a sort of a basic approach, I think, but I guess I view myself really as being the keeper of
Mm,
that vision where we're trying to go.
I love that. Justin?
Yeah, no, I think for me, being a leader in a large organization, I think is really about two things: about showing up and support. And I think
Yeah.
for a lot of people, just being present at an event means it helps them to feel seen, right? So it's
Mhm.
important as a director and commissioner, one, that you budget your time and you budget your priorities. And if your people are your priorities, then you budget time with your people. And so going to, opening day of baseball, going to Camp Best Friends, going to city council events and activities, and being present. And I think that's one of the challenges of the job too, I would say, is because of the scale, there's so many people, that means that there's so many requirements and time spent. So, put on your running shoes and have a good time with it, right? We do popsicles in the park. I try to go to those events, and just it's fun to be outside, invite your family. But then also the support. It looks like asking your team, what do you need? And then when they tell you what they need, going and getting it for them. I think that's how you build credibility and trust as a leader. One of the things I heard when I first came to Atlanta was, we need more resources for maintenance. We need more resources for equipment. We need more resources for staff. And so we were able to work with city council, work with the mayor to obtain those more additional resources. So now we have improved our equipment. We've been able to hire additional teen staff to support safety for our teens, and we've been able to provide more training so that our staff are better equipped and feel more confident in the work that they're doing. And that was all based on staff feedback.
Oh, fantastic. Now I'm curious, do y'all use your parks? Like, do you personally go to
Oh
the
yeah,
yoga classes or go to the farmer's market or attend any of these events?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's Justin said, like, that's part of the gig. I mean, when I had younger kids, it was an easier thing to do, and my kids got so used to just getting dragged everywhere, and both my boys were in the aquatics department working for Justin at some point, right? And
Yeah.
and it's part of what we do, but it's important to get out there and use your parks and understand sort of how those parks are being used, and I get just really excited when I'm out there
Mhm.
walking around. Luckily, my office is in one of the most amazing parks in downtown Austin, so I get to view it every day. But it's such a good point that Justin made about not just being seen, but connecting to the work.
Mhm.
These jobs, and it goes back to the scale conversation, right? Like it's really easy to not get outdoors and make it a point to go out and engage with folks. It's interesting. We're doing this project where my wife, who just happens to be a photographer, is doing this project where just pro bono to go out and photograph some of our employees, because I want to sort of celebrate their work, and she talks to them and sort of gets a sense of like why they're working here and what motivates them. But she a couple of days when she was doing that, she would come home and was like, "This is the most inspiring work I've seen." And she and I've been married for a really long time, and I've been in Parks and Recreation for a really long time. But this is the first time she's like, "Wow, this is engaging with our staff and hearing their stories about why they get up every day to do this amazing work was just inspiring." And it was just a reminder for me that like I got to get out even more to just whether it's the popsicle events or we have events all the time, right? Every evening you could do that. And I guess I'll end by saying the cautionary tale is you also want to be thoughtful and not get burnt out, right? Because you
Yeah.
have your family, you have all those other things. It's easy, particularly the bigger the scale, it's easy to not make time for yourself.
Yeah. Justin?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, I think that's the challenge, right? In Parks and Recreation, is I remember, even as a recreation coordinator, where I would set aside in a suburban community, I would set aside almost a weekend where I would have back-to-back events, so that I didn't have weekends where I would have events. So I would have an event like we do a
Mm.
teen dance Friday night, and then Saturday I would do like a holiday bazaar or something. But that way, it was nice in the sense of scheduling. Otherwise, I would have a weekend every single weekend, and I would have to flex my schedule. I was the only recreation coordinator in this community, so I think that's one of the biggest challenges in Parks and Recreation, and I hear that from my team often is they care so much, and they work so hard that when do they get a break? When do they get to go watch their kid play baseball? When do they get to
Hmm.
go
Hmm.
do something with their kid and with their child? And I think that's the hard part of Parks and Recreation is you're taking care of everybody's kids and understanding as a leader, how are we creating that space? And I think I don't have a good answer for that, and I think
Yeah.
that's one of the challenges. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we'll take a little short break to thank our show sponsors. Really shout out to all the vendors that support the Parks and Rec community. I know we couldn't even run a Parks and Rec department if we didn't have this wall of vendors providing quality products and services for decades. And so, same thing with the Daily Parks and Rec show. We would not have been able to get this thing off the ground if it weren't for a couple of key sponsors that believed in the vision of telling the story of Parks and Rec, and that we needed a louder voice to sound the alarm on what Parks and Rec does for its community, so that we're not considered non-essential services in some crisis, that we are absolutely essential for our communities. So the two of our earliest sponsors were Outdoor Link and the National Academy of Athletics. If you have a smart home, imagine if you had a smart city, so interconnected to where your splash pads, lights, parking lot lights, bathroom door locks. This is the work they do, is to help cities become smart cities so that their infrastructure can be controlled by centralized locations, and you're not having to send men and equipment and trucks to turn off and on switches and stuff. So if you'd like to learn more about that, just hit me up on LinkedIn. I'll get you in touch with Dave and their team. And then the National Academy of Athletics is helping and partnering with a lot of Parks and Rec departments across the country that don't want to or don't have the staff to run some of these newer programs that the city wants. So if your city wants, say, flag football or lacrosse or volleyball, you can cherry pick and have them kind of partner with you to run any of these programs for you, or even your after school care. And so both of those are great partners that have really helped us since the beginning. So Jovi, if you want to run those two promos, and we'll come back and finish up our conversation with Justin and Jesus.
In today's parks and recreation industry, communication, safety, and efficiency go hand in hand. That's where Outdoor Link comes in, delivering smart technology that empowers city departments and community planners to do more, smarter. Outdoor Link's platform connects and automates everything that keeps your parks running smoothly, from lighting and locks to signage, water features, Wi-Fi, and digital advertising. Control and schedule park lights for safety and energy savings. Remotely manage facility access. Coordinate fountains and splash pads. Provide public connectivity. all from one simple, unified platform, giving you real-time control, data, and cost efficiency. For parks and recreation agencies, that means safer spaces, smarter resource use, faster responses, and stronger community engagement. And behind every great park story is great infrastructure. That's why Outdoor Link proudly supports DPRS Media Company, helping the Daily Parks and Rec Show amplify the voices of professionals shaping our communities every day. Outdoor Link, smart, connected solutions for parks, recreation, and beyond.
They say it's just rec. Just rec, where kids learn to try again. Just rec, where confidence begins. Where teamwork, effort, and fun matter more than trophies. It's not about perfection. It's about participation. It's not just rec. It's where kids learn to love the game and themselves. It's just rec until they learn teamwork for life. It's just rec, but it's everything to them. It's more than rec. It's a movement. It's just rec until you realize it's shaping the next generation. Together, we're not just running programs, we're building a culture of confidence, connection, and community. Join us.
All right, so the next topic can sometimes be a little challenging, and I think it's not just exclusive to large Parks and Rec departments. It's about kind of the politics, and a lot of times we have mayors that try to drag us into this political stuff, and here we are just trying to build and serve our community. I'm wondering, how do y'all deal with balancing between keeping your mayor happy, and maybe you've got a mayor that wants to be very ambitious and do so much stuff, and you've got this shoestring budget that you're trying to stretch and maintain what you have. So I'm curious. Let's, Justin, why don't you go first about how you kind of balance between the whole political world and then building your community?
Yeah, well, one, I think learning a lot from Jesus and Christopher Williams and the Seattle Parks and Rec, I think really has helped me just think more politically about like how do you get things done. And I think one of the things that I understood from Christopher is sometimes it's more important to get it done than be right. And I think it's about finding a way to be comfortable with also and be comfortable with the decision, right? Because we all work for somebody. Whether you're an executive director of a park district, you work for a board. If you're a commissioner or a director, you work for a mayor. And I know in Atlanta, I work for Mayor Andre Dickens, and at the end of the day, his name is on my paycheck. And so my job is to execute and deliver the parks and recreation services that he and I and our teams agree to on behalf of our community, and that community informs us. So if you keep that in mind, it makes the politics really easy because you work then collaboratively with the leadership team. So in my case, I work with LaShondra Burks, the COO of the city of Atlanta, and Deputy Chief Theo Pace, and we kind of chart a path forward together of here are the objectives that we want to achieve over the next fiscal year or calendar year on behalf of the city. And so as long as I meet those objectives and then work collaboratively with them and with the city council, you tend to stay on the right side. I think it's when you tend to deviate from that and maybe you end up playing politics, you kind of maybe sees things differently and you work with city council to do something that would be different or work with community to do something that would be different. That can be challenging. I think that can put you in a real a pickle sometimes when it comes to politics, right? Because you never want to be between the mayor and the city council. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges is trying to find, the mayor has asked us or the council has asked, us as leaders to do a job, and, providing them with data and information to get the job done, I think is really critical. But then also working with community as advocates, and that can be a really fine line to straddle sometimes. And I think in Atlanta, what I've tried to do is, understand what the mayor wants to achieve, which is a city built for the future, one safe city for all. ethical and efficient government. And, he has a moniker about Atlanta's a group project and Atlanta's the best place to raise a child. So I take that information and I think about what does it mean for my department? Because I don't get a lot of face time with the mayor. And I think in larger cities, you don't get a lot of face time necessarily with the leader of the organization. So you have to be able to translate that and work with the chief operating officer in your reports to, come to a consensus on what that looks like, and then work with the resources you have, ask for additional resources. You can ask, they can always say no, but your job is to ask and provide valuable reasons as to why you feel like you need more assets and what that outcome would be. But I think that's what I've learned, both working with Jesus, working with Christopher, and in other spaces. But that's what has been really helpful for me when it comes to politics.
Jesus?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's probably one of the most complicated aspects of these jobs, but also for me, one of the most interesting and on some
Yeah.
level enjoyable, because as Justin said, like you're building that bridge between sort of the ultimate decision makers and your team. And governments are different, right? In Washington D.C. and in Seattle, we had a strong mayor form of government. So I worked for the mayor, and council members, obviously also have input and they represent their districts, but ultimately the mayor's vision is what you're driving. If this were a park district, you have a board of park commissioners that you work for. Here in Austin and a couple other cities, we have a city manager form of government. So I work for a city manager who works for the city council. And so now you've got all of their various sort of priorities. And I think for me that the I guess a couple things I'll say about how to navigate the politics. I think first and foremost, it's really important for all of the ultimate decision makers to have the information that they need to make those decisions, and in as much as possible, get it to them before a community member comes to them, right? Because at the end of the day, you don't want, people will react. All of us react, and I tell my team the same thing. Like, I'll have your back, but if I'm surprised by something, I can't, I don't know how to respond to that. So being very, very, committed to engaging with whether it's your mayor or the city manager or the other elected officials, just so they have that information, because that's all they can operate on. They're hearing from their constituents, and they need to hear from you. I think the other piece is trying to find the right balance to communicate to your mayor, city manager, council that you're in this job for a reason. Like Justin and I are professionals. Like they hired us because they think that we know what we're doing. And on some level, it's important to find the right place to say, look, it's just like I'm going to do what I'm told as long as it's not illegal. But here's what I think, right? Because I'm the professional. I'm in this work day to day. I know what I'm doing. You need to trust me, and that's where you have to build that relationship. I mean, those aren't the exact words that I would use, but that's sort of how you have to navigate that relationship. And then the last thing I'll say that is a challenge is we've got lots and lots and lots of people running around this department doing different things, very focused on their work, and they don't have the luxury that I have of seeing the big picture, of engaging with the community members. So sometimes it's working with our internal teams to say, look, I get that this is, you're charged with preserving parkland. Here's something that we need to consider. Here's something we need to think about. Give me all the pitfalls, all the challenges, all the legal issues or whatever. Ultimately, I'm going to make a decision, but my job is, like, I will never tell people like you're doing that because I told you to, right? No one should ever say that we're doing this because the director said you got to do it. But that doesn't mean that I'm not going to make decisions that are unpopular, that people don't agree with. But you have to bring those folks along as well. I think that's the biggest challenge, because you want them to be focused, you want them to be professionals, you want them to really do what they're doing. But sometimes you need them to take a step outside of that, and sort of understand the larger vision of the city, et cetera. So it's it's hard. It's not a one-time thing, right? Like I spend a lot of my time doing that these days, just given the pressures that our city's dealing with in terms of growth, in terms of the changing communities. Everybody's doing something, and it almost ultimately, anytime somebody's building something, it almost ultimately always impacts parkland. And we got to preserve our parkland. We have to be stewards of these resources. And so navigating that is quite a political challenge too.
All right. So if each of you were kind of coaching or mentoring or just advising directors across America, what's like a simple playbook that you could give them to say, this is the data, this is the information you want to keep in front of of the political side, your mayor, your council, or whatever. And this is just kind of a good starting spot. Justin, would you like to go first?
Man, I'll let Jesus go first on that
I was I was expecting him to call on you. I was glad. Um, I mean, it's a great question. What I would never, what I would say to someone coming into a new department or a new city or a new community is just don't presume. And again, we've all had lots of experience. Like I've been in a couple different cities. Justin's been in a couple different cities. Like we know how to do this work. And I'm comfortable saying that, and I know that I can walk in and do the work. But Austin is different from Seattle, it's different from DC, it's different from Atlanta, it's different from New Orleans, and different at various levels, right? There's the big P politics, and of course, there's a probably more important little P politics with all the various community members. So going into a new jurisdiction, I wouldn't assume anything. I would go and engage with everybody, all the stakeholders, talk to the people, talk to the elected officials to kind of understand, because it's so easy to step into things you shouldn't be stepping into. That also would be so easy just to have somebody tell you, hey, you know what, that thing, that issue, that whatever, here's what happened in the past. You probably don't want to lead with that. So assume, be confident in your skills and your abilities and your experience, but don't assume that you know what's going on in that community. And then I guess the other thing I'll say is, even though, as Justin said, it's hard to get time on the calendar for your boss. It is, especially at these levels. But you gotta understand where they're going, right? Presumably, you took the job because you believe in their vision, right? Hopefully that's the first step. But also making sure that you begin to really get to know them and listen to everything they say, because that's going to impact sort of how you should be making your decisions to align with the vision of the ultimate decision maker.
Justin.
Yeah, no, I think Jesus said it well. Don't assume things. And I think I've transitioned numerous times through different levels of positions, and one thing that's been really helpful for me is a book called "You're in Charge Now What," and that has provided a really good framework for understanding my first 100 days and what I needed to achieve. They had 5 questions. What's working well? What can we improve upon? What do you hope I do? What are you concerned I would do? And what advice do you have for me? And I think that then became the framework for my tenure in any organization I worked in. And I would carry that with me as a reminder of, what do I need to be focused on? What are my team members concerned that I might do? And how would I mitigate those concerns? And unfortunately, you also have to be ready to throw out that playbook, because when I was in Seattle, I started in February of 2019. 1 year later, I was not the director of recreation. I was the director of showers. What was it? Showers, childcare, and shelters. I really literally changed my title to help me understand, like, accept my job. And so I think also as leaders, you have to have a playbook, but then you have to be willing to adapt to that playbook based on whatever may come. In Atlanta, day 3 on the job, there was a homicide in a park. And so our focus then became park safety, which I would also say that oftentimes these jobs, and any job, is a job of opportunity. There will be things that come across your desk that you say, I have to do that now because the door is open. If you wait, you're going to miss that opportunity. For me, it was that opportunity around maintenance and safety, that those had become issues that were really prominent in Atlanta. If I had waited a couple years and not done anything about it, the door would have closed. But instead, we were able to capitalize on that and increase our and exponentially increase our maintenance funding, which also increased our park, allowed us to add a park ranger program, allowed us to provide security cameras at our parks. But if you weren't able to see those doors opening and then have a plan to walk through those doors, I think that's where your success erodes in these larger urban institutions, because oftentimes it's organizational inertia that either allows you to get work done or inhibits your success. And so you have to be adept at understanding where is the inertia of the organization going. Fortunately, in Atlanta, the inertia is, we have wind at our back related to Parks and Recreation. The mayor is constantly talking about how Atlanta's a group project. How are you working with partners? Atlanta is the best place to raise a child. So that makes my job generally easier because I'm out in community asking people to come work on the mayor's group project, right? Come volunteer, come be a youth coach. And then whenever we talk about, raising Atlanta being the best place to raise a child, we can talk about quality of our parks, quality of our recreation programs, quality of our camps, quality of our after school program. And that makes my job easier working for a mayor that has a vision of what he wants to achieve. And so I think identifying those large aspirational goals, and then adapting your organization to achieve that result, and building the systems, as Jesus was talking about, in the team, and bringing people along, and then helping those people who may not see themselves in that vision, translating that for them so it becomes a personal point of connection, and helping them connect back to the vision in which they may not have seen themselves in originally, I think is really important.
Mm. All right. So the next topic is also a challenging one, and it can be financially crushing for a lot of cities. And it's the whole deferred maintenance. And a lot of times when we walk into a city and it's got maybe 30 years of just kicking deferred maintenance down the road. I'm curious to how y'all kind of handle this kind of mountain to climb of deferred maintenance. Who would like to go first? I'll throw it up to y'all on that one.
I mean, I'm happy to kick us off, because I mean, I think this is, the deferred maintenance component is, yet another sort of symptom of kind of how we as an industry have not, frankly, done a good enough job of just kind of making the case for us as infrastructure, right? Social infrastructure, literally, the whole funding of parks and recreation, and really thinking about how elected officials view sort of how you invest. And because on one hand, the reason that we have such deferred maintenance challenges is because at some point, and across the history of every department, there's been this culture of parks and recreation is super important, and people invest a ton in acquiring land and building facilities and creating this stuff. And then through the various kind of economic cycles, Parks and Rec keeps kind of getting pushed back, and we sort of end up with the situation where in our case, most of our buildings are now probably at right around the 50-year-old, kind of way past the useful life cycle. So it's quite a challenge. I mean, the answer I would give to how do you approach this is, and the reason I led with just generally it's about funding, I think it's a pretty basic sort of theory of change. If you think about parks and recreation, like here we talk a lot about resources, and people are like, well, we don't have enough money to do this, we don't have enough money to do that. But what I like to say as an organization is, if we do a really good job with the resources that we have of planning, designing, maintaining, operating, programming, et cetera, park spaces and facilities, like the residents, and we engage with community as we do that, the residents, the advocacy comes with that, right? If we do our job, we will get park advocates. Like last year, we had a pretty challenging budget process here in Austin, but the conversation was all about how do we preserve parks and recreation? How do we support operations and maintenance? And we just need to do our job well, communicate with community, but also being honest to say, well, we can't do that. And whether it's a specific program, but it's also like this pool has to close because it's not safe, because it's fallen apart. Again, if you're not going to give me the money, I'm not going to argue. But at the end of the day, we also have to be really honest with ourselves and with community members and with elected officials to say, this is what's going to happen without the resources. And not doing it in a way where I'm like whining about it. I'm just telling them, I'm giving you the reality. Like, you're charging me with stewarding this system. If we don't deal with the deferred maintenance, we're gonna have to close stuff down, and trying to figure out how to be as honest as possible about that. But really, it's just about advocacy. I think is the way that we undo that.
All right, Justin.
Yeah, I think you got to start, with an assessment. You got to know what you got, and then you got to know where you're going, right? And I think when I came on board in Atlanta, we had just completed a strategic plan. We knew that we had $700 million in deferred maintenance. We had generally we knew how much it cost us per acre, but we didn't have a study to kind of validate our maintenance budget. And so we worked with a consulting company to do that assessment, I don't know, I'm butchering the H&R advisors, right? And they did a great job. And they helped us understand, like, what is the cost per acre. And then we looked at the mow schedule, and I did a visual preference survey to help people understand what is the grass height on a 10-day mow cycle. And in Atlanta, that can be pretty long. You can't even kick a soccer ball or throw a football because there might be snakes in the tall grass. So, we looked at the mow cycle, and part of our problem was just consistency of the mow cycle because we didn't have staff and our equipment was failing. So we used that information. We created stories. We talked with our partners. We talked with our different advocacy groups, provided them with the information. Then they advocated on our behalf. I was just providing data and, facts, and then they would provide the vote yes or vote no, or do this or do that. And so having a really good partnership with your advocacy group. I know Austin Park Foundation, they're pretty tight with Park Pride, which is our park foundation here in Atlanta. and they work really collaboratively. We co-office with the foundation here in Atlanta. They raise millions of dollars for us every year. They have a park stewardship program to help steward the parks. Um, but I think fundamentally, it does come down to resources and priorities. And I would say that budgets are the best example of priorities of a city. And so when you look at the budget, where's the priorities? Oftentimes it's police, fire, and then parks and recreation. Our job as directors and leaders is to really help show how the mayor's priorities are aligned with our budget, and then work hard to get those additional resources, and then be willing to ask partners, right? Be willing to ask people in your community, ask philanthropy, ask contractors, ask nonprofits to do work at your space, and offer them discounts within reason, or work within the framework you have to invite people in to solve your problems.
Mhm.
I've written grants for other nonprofits because I don't care who gets the money or the credit. I want them to do work in my park. And so I will go out and we will use our resources to write grants to get those resources in our parks. I haven't done that in Atlanta. So if anybody's watching, we didn't do it in Atlanta, but in other places, I would literally have people write grants for other organizations so they would then do the work in our park, because they just didn't have the capacity to do that.
Mhm.
And I think that is important, because sometimes you just got to get creative, and you have to think about what are ways that you can leverage, your resources. We have the physical assets, we have the staff. Those are the special ingredients that we have. Now, how do we build a stone soup where everybody's throwing a rock in to make the system a better system?
Mhm.
And so I think, the best, I think it's about being creative and and thinking through how are you using the limited resources, as Jesus was talking about, to get the work done. And then that will attract, your success will attract people to your cause.
Love that. All right. So as we close out the show, I'd like to dig into a little bit about what are each of you's personal why? Why have you chosen Parks and Recreation as your career path? How is it meaningful to you? How is it impactful to you? And why do you continue to call Parks and Rec home? Jesus?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it really is sort of the realization that, well, I'll back up. Like my entire career has been really about serving people. I did it in the education sphere, and now I'm doing it here. And I really am completely convinced that cities are where we really serve people, and really improve the lives of people, and make sure that they can thrive, making sure that they have what they need. And I think Parks and Recreation really is the place that, or the industry, the organization that has the most potential to impact positively the lives of our residents. And I mean, every single day, I'm driven by this idea that, we're providing fun things for people. We're providing, supporting the environment, all those things, but really it's about how we improve the lives of the people that live in the city. That's what gets me excited every day to come to work.
Oh, fantastic. Justin?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't have said it better, but and I'll just double click on people. I mean, it's about both the organizations that we create that support our staff. I think there's nothing more fulfilling than being able to hand somebody a certificate for a training that they completed, an accomplishment that they achieved, a successful event that they knocked out of the park, seeing the smiles on the kids' faces, having a senior come up and just let you know that they're thinking about you, and they just really appreciate the fact that you are working hard for them and on their behalf. I mean, that's what we get paid in. Yes, we get compensated, but at the end of the day, it's about changing the world and making a difference on the life of a single person, right? I really center the single person. And because I think if you connect with people on an individual level, that has ripples beyond time and space. And I think that's where the amazing opportunity is. So spending time with staff and being intentional, spending time with people in your community and understanding what their needs are, and then fulfilling that need, following through. But fundamentally, it's about people and just serving humanity, and that's what I really enjoy about Parks and Rec, and just that's what's fun. So
Yeah.
And can I underscore something Justin said?
Sure.
Because I do think, so it's the people in the communities, but the other thing that really jazzes me up is just the people that work in Parks and Recreation. And again, I've been so lucky to work in 3 different communities, every single person that I run into in Parks and Recreation is so committed to this work, and we all do such different types of work, right? Whether it's
Yeah.
folks driving trucks or folks climbing the trees and cutting things. It's just impressive to me how motivated and inspired people who come to Parks and Recreation are, and that I think is such an important part of why I'm here too.
Mm. Okay, so last question, and it just kind of blows my mind that this is still a discovery major for so many of us. We never even realize you can get a job in Parks and Rec, even though most of the time my first job was as a lifeguard or cutting grass or
Mm.
coaching. What kind of testimony would you give? Or imagine if you were sitting in front of a group of college kids undecided. What would be your testimony as why they should dedicate their life to this, and what kind of opportunities there are in Parks and Rec? Justin, why don't you go first?
Sure, I'll go first. So I actually majored in Parks and Recreation.
There
I
you
went
go.
to
Unicorn.
Washington. I went to Washington State University. Go Cougs! And I went there because they had multiple tracks, but one they had Parks and Rec, and I was originally going to go into like camping ministries and work at youth camps. And after getting out of college and struggling as as like a college ministry worker, I fell in love with Portland Parks. And I know, so I had Dina Jesus. I know
Well,
she's there, so
yeah.
that's great. But I fell in love with Portland Parks and then just fell in love with Parks and Recreation. And I think what I realized is I have the opportunity to impact so many people, as we just talked about, on a daily basis. I have an opportunity to connect at a civic nature, which I think the power of cities is still untapped, in my opinion. And I think when you look at what's going on, national, international, cities are really where people are still meeting and engaging in civic life. And there's so much power and opportunity there. But I think Parks and Recreation is really that nexus of that power, that opportunity, and the opportunity to impact people on a daily basis. And so a job in Parks and Recreation is really a job supporting humanity and supporting mankind and really creating opportunities for the youngest and the oldest, the smartest and the maybe not so smart, and the people that have special needs, and just everybody in our community to come together and provide those resources and really connect. And that's what we do every day, is we provide that connection. And you could go work in the nonprofit sector. Yeah, you could go work in the for-profit sector, but public parks and recreation, um, you're generally compensated better than the nonprofit sector. You have a pretty decent healthcare and benefit package. You may not be as well compensated as the private sector. So I think it's a good sweet spot if money is what is motivating you, or your parents have told you need to have health insurance. But it's just an amazing opportunity to work in municipal government and work in Parks and Recreation.
Oh, fantastic answer. Jesus?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with all of that, and municipal government, I do think, is where it's at. But if I were, in front of a group of young people, like, I would also just say, look, part of our jobs as people is to help other people. I mean, I
Mhm.
wouldn't shy away from that. I mean, I think that's what drives me, but I think everyone has a responsibility to help others. Given that, there's such an amazing kind of broad spectrum of things you can do in Parks and Recreation, right? You can be a lawyer, you can be an engineer, an architect, a forester, an educator, a biologist, like whatever you want to do. And if you want to do it in a way that's going to help people with decent health insurance and career stability, I mean, this is a pretty sweet place to be overall. Justin's mentioned him a couple of times, and I guess I can't leave a podcast on Parks and Rec without mentioning Christopher Williams. But I mean, an impressive, amazing, inspiring leader, human being, big mentor to many of us. One of the things that he would always say when he would go and greet new employees, the department, new employee orientations, like he would basically describe it like, you just won the lottery ticket, right? You got a government job, and really talking through with them how important and what a unique opportunity they have. And it's true, like this is a really good spot to be as a young person committed to improving the world, and you can pick whatever field you want to be in. You can probably find it in Parks and Rec.
All right. Well, big shout out to Chris Williamson. I think I'm going to have to get
Yeah.
him as my next guest on
Yeah,
the show.
yeah.
Yeah,
He's
he'd be great.
retired.
Yeah.
Good luck, but yeah,
He might be calling in from a fishing boat.
that's right.
fine.
That's
But
right.
we've
Yeah.
done worse locations.
Yeah.
Guys, thank y'all so much for coming on the show today and sharing all y'all's wisdom and your whole life journey. And I really appreciate all the hard work that y'all have put in throughout y'all's career in building community. It doesn't go unnoticed. And thank y'all again for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thank you, Craig.
All right.
Thank you, and it's
to
so
see
good to be
Jesus.
on this with you, Justin.
You too. It's
Yeah.
great
been
to
a lot
see
of
it.
fun. And it looks like
Yeah.
you're still at Denny Park. You got that window in the
It,
back. I mean, it's
no
beautiful. It's
kidding.
beautiful.
I should send you a
Yeah.
picture of this building. It looks identical to the Parks and Rec
Oh my
headquarters
gosh.
in Denny Park in
What
Seattle.
park
It's
is that?
1949. Well, this is in, we're right along the lake. So it's Auditorium Shores. It's, Vilker Park to the other side, Barton Creek. So it's, like you can see the water. We need to get the trees trimmed a little bit, but I'm, probably 150 feet from the lake here. Um, it's just a really, really fun urban park here.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to visit that one on my next visit to
Yeah,
Austin.
yeah. Come
Yeah.
on down.
Well,
Well,
fantastic, guys.
Yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and for your guests, our listeners, City Park Alliance is going to be in Austin. So if you want
that's
to
right.
hang out
Thank
with
you.
Jesus, hang out with myself, Craig, you're welcome to join us.
Yeah. When is
City
that?
Park Alliance, it's the weekend, I think it's June 12th through the 16th in
Yep,
Austin. There's going to be a
yep.
ton of tours, opportunities to see all the great parks, learn from the best and brightest in Austin and from around the world and urban parks. So that's a great opportunity for your listeners to just come and learn from each other and share their
Mhm.
knowledge too, and just
Yep,
gain more skills and experience.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to learn more about that. So City
yeah,
Park
Yeah.
Alliance, I may have to reach out to them and
yeah,
kind of share with the
Yeah.
yeah,
community
They'd be
the work
great.
what kind
yeah,
of work do
yeah.
they do?
Well, it's the Greater Greener Conference. So City Park Alliance is all about, urban park systems, really focused on
Mm.
partnerships. And the Greater Greener Conference is every 2 years. The last one was in Seattle. So now they're coming here to Austin. And it's about 1,200 parks and rec leaders from across the country coming to do all the things that Justin was talking about, really learning about the cool system we have here in Austin, but also, like every conference, learning from each other. It's going to be a lot of fun. It'll be a little warm, but it'll be fun.
Ah,
It'll be a good time. And Austin's so
Yeah,
beautiful. And you
it
got the
is.
river
It
and
is.
yeah, well,
Yeah,
fantastic.
please join us. Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for coming on the show today. Appreciate
Thank
all
you.
y'all's work, and you have a great rest of your week.
You
You
too.
too. Take it
Bye.
easy.
Bye. All right, so that was another great show. Thank you, Justin, for helping set that up. Thank you, Jesus, for attending. And again, I just wanted to give a big shout out to all of you Parks and Rec directors that are working tirelessly to bring value to community and doing the work of building community. And as both of those gentlemen just said, it's such a fulfilling job to get, and you really can have a massive impact. And I think that serves this latest generation who seem to be a lot more focused on the quality of life and the difference they're making, and not just chasing the paycheck. So hopefully we have a lot of young professionals coming into this industry to do the same work as Justin and Jesus, and hopefully fill their shoes whenever they're deciding to retire. But appreciate you guys coming on the show today and listening in. And we will see y'all here again tomorrow. You have a great day. Love you guys. Thanks. Bye.
In the parks and recreation industry, attention is limited, but influence is everything. Every day, thousands of parks and recreation professionals make critical decisions. Decisions on infrastructure, programs, technology, and vendors. The question is your brand part of that conversation? DPRS Media Network was built to answer that question. We are a dedicated media ecosystem focused exclusively on the parks and recreation industry in the United States. Through a network of daily and weekly shows, we inform, connect, and influence this audience. Our distribution spans multiple platforms: LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, X, Instagram, plus email campaigns, newsletters, podcasts, and live event coverage. This is not a single-channel strategy. It is a multi-platform media engine. Today, our network reaches over 214,000 connections, including 51,000 on LinkedIn, 64,000 on Facebook, nearly 40,000 email subscribers, and thousands more across podcast and social platforms. While some audiences overlap, our true value is not just reach, it is relevance. We speak directly to parks and recreation directors, program managers, and industry leaders, an audience that is highly targeted and actively engaged. Through DPRS Media Network, your brand integrates seamlessly into this ecosystem. Through sponsored show segments, targeted advertisement placements, podcast features, and host-read promotions, even custom branded content. Not as interruptions, but as part of the conversation. And we don't just operate online. We attend over 15 major parks and recreation conventions each year, reaching more than 24,000 professionals in person. Through live shows, interviews, and on-site media coverage, we position our partners at the center of the industry. Every piece of content we produce is amplified across our entire network. Multiple shows, multiple hosts, multiple platforms. Your message doesn't appear once, it multiplies. This is more than advertising. It is strategic positioning within a trusted media network built specifically for the parks and recreation industry. If your goal is to reach decision makers, build credibility, and stay top of mind, then it's time to partner with DPRS Media Network. Apply for partnership or sponsorship today. Let's position your brand where the industry is already paying attention.
Are you a vendor, brand, or service provider ready to connect with the heartbeat of local communities? At DPRS Media Co., we tell the stories shaping parks and recreation across America. Through podcasts, live streams, videos, and newsletters, we reach frontline leaders, city directors, and decision makers every single week. From youth sports and facilities to programming and policy, our audience is your audience. Sponsoring or partnering with DPRS Media Co. puts your brand in front of the professionals who build, budget, and buy for their communities. Launching a new product, growing your presence in public spaces, targeting cities, counties, or departments, DPRS is your trusted media partner. Whether you're in software, turf, aquatics, robotics, smart cities, or special events, partnering with DPRS puts your brand in the story. With commercials, interviews, social campaigns, newsletters, and live shows, we're your media team. Partner with us and grow your impact in the $200 billion parks and rec industry. DPRS Media Co. Stories that move parks and rec forward. Your audience is here. Let's meet them.